Welcome to the meeting room at Global TV Talk Show, a broadcast service of globalbusinessnews.net.
Now, here's your host, Ed Cohen.
Hi, this is Ed Cohen in San Diego, and welcome again to Global TV Talk Show. This is a service of globalbusinessnews.net. Go check it out, globalbusinessnews.net. Not only do we have some breaking news, but we also have some really interesting tidbits that will give you links to everything else. Special guest today is author Stephen Howard, who is from Southern California, has written 21 books. Can you imagine? And 21 books, and a lot of them, if not all, have to do with leadership. Is that right, Stephen Howard?
Yeah, that's correct. The last 5 or 6 have to do with leadership, Ed.
All right. So I've never written a book, but as a magazine editor and publisher, I put things together, and but I don't start from a blank page and one sentence, topic sentence A, and then then what? I can't imagine 21 books.
Well, I'll give your listeners and viewers a tip here. The hardest thing about writing is the third word. And you start with that blank piece of paper and you type chapter 1. and then where do you go from there?
So tell us about Caliante leadership.
Well, Caliante leadership, as you said, I live in Southern California. I live in the desert of Southern California, Ed. And Caliante, as many people will know, is Spanish for hot. But the second definition of Caliante is passionate, i.e. a conversation caliente is a passionate conversation. And I'm very passionate about leadership, very passionate about leadership development. And so I named my company Caliante Leadership. And also the land that I live on is owned by the Agua Caliante Band of Indians, hot water Band of Indians. And so it's also my tribute to our Native American landowners.
Yeah. And so have you been in the gambling casino there?
Oh, a few times, although I grew up in Las Vegas, so I have to admit, right through my teenage years and my college years. So I have to admit that casinos don't have a lot of intrigue for me anymore.
Got it. Okay. All right. So let's talk about your new product. As I'm reading here, it's an 8-part online learning and education program for new leaders, supervisors, and managers.
Yeah, it's an idea I came up with just about a year ago, Thanksgiving weekend of 2019. And I was thinking, I spend most of my time pre-pandemic, in classrooms teaching people at Fortune 500 major global companies about leadership and leadership skills. I thought, how could I bring that to the people who don't get this kind of training, who work for smaller companies, who don't get little cohorts put together for leadership development, people in nonprofit organizations, people in small enterprises. And so I thought I could create an online training program for them. And so I started developing it in November 2019 and launched it in October 2020. And that's exactly who it's aimed for. It's aimed at new people, new managers, new supervisors, new leaders. Because typically what happens, Ed, is, your boss calls you in on Thursday and says, Ed, congratulations, you're now going to be the supervisor of this team beginning on Monday. You're going to do a really great job. Call me if you have any questions, but listen, you'll do a great job. And that's it. Monday morning, you walk in, you're the supervisor.
Yeah. And yeah, but he doesn't tell you, or she doesn't tell you, how do you get people who don't like you to now engage with you?
Exactly. Or how can you motivate people, whether they like you or not? How can you motivate you? I've been doing leadership training now for 30 years, and the thing I constantly see is that new leaders are afraid to give feedback to people because they've never been taught a process to how to give feedback. And so they're afraid of it, and they go into that feedback conversation and they're not confident. And of course, the person receiving the feedback sees that lack of confidence, sees that inability to give good feedback, and tends to be a very terrible conversation. So that's one of the skills that this new online program teaches, is how to give relevant and actionable feedback.
Okay, so feedback is very interesting. We did a program recently with pharmaceutical exec Sergei Gorbatov, and from AbbVie, the pharmaceutical company.
Mhm.
And it was all about feedback, a book that he co-wrote with Angela Lane about, they called it fair talk. And what does that mean? Well, it means communicating.
Right.
That means it's okay to talk back to your boss, but how do you do it?
Right.
So what you just said that I picked up on is that the new manager has to give feedback to the direct reports.
Yes.
And that's different though, isn't it?
That's different, but it's also sometimes you want to give feedback to your boss though, as well. And I totally agree with Angela and the gentleman on their theory on the book. It has to be a two-way communication. But most people, when they give feedback, just say, "Well, you need to do better." Well, what does that mean? What do I need to do better? Or you need to have a better attitude. Well, what does that mean? It's not actionable. So one of the things I teach people is that even positive feedback, reinforcing feedback. If I tell you, Ed, you did a great show today, it feels warm and fuzzy inside. You're going to like that comment, but how's that actionable? What was good about it? Was your intro good? Was the segue to your commercial good? Were your questions good? So if I was your boss, I would be giving you feedback. Say, hey, Ed, you gave really good questions to Stephen today, particularly that question about feedback. And now you have something to action. Now you know how to do your next show equally as well. That's actionable.
Yeah, that's
feedback.
cool. Your new program can be found. I'm looking here at theartofgreatleadership.com.
Correct.
So when people go there, what are they going to find?
Well, on it's a kind of a landing site for the program. There's a couple informational videos. There's each of the modules is outlined. They know exactly what they're going to get. And also they're going to learn a little bit about me and they're going to learn about my values and my beliefs, my leadership philosophy, so to speak. And if that's in tune with what they want to learn, then I encourage them, most importantly, to set up a phone call with me. Let's talk for 15, 20 minutes, find out what their challenges are, what their needs are, what their desires are, and make sure the program's right for them. I mean, I don't want anybody just jumping in and buying the program without really understanding it, particularly because there are some unique aspects of this training program that they won't find anywhere else. And so I want to talk to them about those unique aspects.
So are you talking about senior leaders or middle managers?
Mid-level leaders and first-time what I call frontline leaders, new supervisors, new team leaders, new managers. Their titles are all over the place in the business world today. Or quite honestly, someone who's been in a leadership position for several years but never got formal training. Again, they might work for a small organization and they're learning it the hard way, learning it by trial and error. So that's also relevant for somebody who has some leadership experience, but no formal training in the area of leadership.
So in one of your earlier books, one of them about brain, the power of the brain and connections. I remember the graphic. It looked like it was like, whoa, something like that mad scientist out of Back to the Future. I can't remember his name, but that kind of hairdo.
Right.
And so is that because the brain fizzles or sizzles?
Well, it can do both, and it's up to us to decide which it should do. When we're under stress, under anxiety, it fizzles a lot. When we're hot, when we're in the flow, it probably sizzles, and that's where we want to get to. And one of the modules in the program is about that. It's about mindful decision making, which is what the book was about. The book was better decisions, better thinking, and better outcomes, and tells leaders how to pause and ask good questions and respond to situations rather than to react to situations. And there's one module, one of the 8 modules is based on that book and talks about those concepts as well as some mindful breathing exercises and things you can do to get yourself under control when you're stressed or under anxiety. And, in today's world of the pandemic and, on again and off again lockdown situations, we're all under tremendous stress. So it's a really important module for people to get their hands around and understand to make better decisions.
Yeah, so today is December 1st, 2020, and thank God this year is almost over. And we're looking forward to the lucky 21 coming.
Right.
And so I already signed up with my doctor to be one of the first to get the needle right there. So I'm hopeful that it comes right away. So let's talk about fizzle versus sizzle, and the idea of mental health in leadership. Certainly the worker, the mid managers, or direct reports. Everybody's impacted by the stress of working from home or just being different, and all the rules and regs, and who's going to get the 5G time and when, and then so now we have a boss, uh, and this person's under stress too. But you know, what's well-being? How does a senior leader, whether it's a large company or a small company, doesn't matter, particularly now when everyone's doing this kind of a screen thing. Um, how do you mentioned breathing and that kind of thing, um, well-being in the workplace. Can you get into that?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's a subject I'm very passionate about, and I kind of define well-being as putting yourself in a position to thrive, both professionally and personally. So some people think well-being is the lack of illness or the lack of mental stress or the lack of physical stress or something like that. I look at well-being more holistically and things that you want to be able to thrive both personally and professionally. And I think a leader has to take care of themselves first. It's kind of like, the safety demonstration on the airline. If the mask comes down, you put your mask on first before you help your child or your passenger next to you. And I think leaders have to be very, very, what's the word I'm looking for? Very specific about taking care of their wellness. And the other reason for that is if they walk the talk, if their employees see them, taking time out, going out for a break at lunchtime, not working at their desk, taking care of their health, having a good balance in their life, then I think they set a good example for their employees. I also think employers in today's world, particularly when people start coming back to the workplace, have an obligation to create a well-being environment for their employees. And that's just not stopping bullying and stuff like that, but understanding that everyone's coming back with stress. Everyone has, some people may be coming back. The other spouse might be still at home. The kids might still be doing home, schooling from home. Every leader needs to think and understand that each employee is going to have a different story, a different situation, and they're going to have to lead them differently going forward and take that well-being into consideration.
So we're talking about a process of turning good managers into great leaders, or something like that.
Yes.
All right. Is it different for a woman?
I think it definitely is different from women. Partly there's some societal things, there's some corporate situations. I talk about news breaking. I just read today that I don't know when it happened, but apparently NASDAQ is now going to mandate that every board has to have one female, I believe, and one person from non-white racial. I don't know how you want to describe it, but they want diversity in boards. They're going to mandate that. And I think sometimes we have to, I'm not really keen personally on quotas, but I do see the societal need for, enforcing some of this stuff and making sure that we have more diversity in the workplace. So absolutely. I think women have a tougher time being a leader. Without a doubt. On the other hand, I think there's a tremendous great leaders out there. You mentioned one earlier, Angela Lane from AbbVie. I don't know her personally, but I've heard many great things about her and her leadership skills. I've seen other women leaders on your program, quite frankly, and I'm a big supporter of women in the leadership positions. And I think they have to be strong, be the same strong leaders, the same great leaders, the same skills that men do, but sometimes they have to bring their own persona into it.
And so what about Hispanics or Blacks or whatever?
I think in many cases, and same with women, it will depend on the corporate culture. I think there are many good corporations out there where, Hispanic, Black leaders, Black women leaders, Hispanic women leaders excel very well. And it's the nature of the corporate culture. But I do know, I've been in organizations where I've done training for major multinational corporations, and I am shocked by the lack of diversity that I get sometimes in my leadership programs. I mean, I'll get 85% will be white males between 25 and 35. And it's like, what's wrong with your industry? And it is industry specific. I mean, I'll tell you, it's the mining industry, sometimes the oil and gas industry, although some oil and gas is getting more diversified if you work with people in the headquarters. But once you get out in the chemical plants and the petroleum manufacturing plants and stuff like that out in the field, there is a distinct lack of diversity, unfortunately.
So it's not political, it's business. And
Yes.
so it's the people who you're dealing with, the customers are women, are Black, are Hispanic, or Asian, or whatever, Indian, or whatever. It's the customers. You're dealing with your customers. How can you understand if you don't have any relationships within the workplace where decisions are made about the products or about the processes when you don't have anybody who looks that way?
Or understands that way, understands that culture. I mean, I'm fortunate. I spent 21 years living in Singapore early in my career, and then I moved to Australia for 12 years. So I've spent 33 years of which is the bulk of my professional career outside the United States. And so it becomes very natural for me to sense this. I identify it very quickly, but others they don't see it. They haven't been exposed to it. I'll tell you, when I first moved to Asia, I directed a photo shoot. I was working for Texas Instruments, and we had one of these electronic things called Speak and Spell, and I directed a photo shoot. And I had a little bit of racial diversity in it, but I had a picture of a kid playing the game by himself. And boy, did my country manager in Taiwan pulled me inside and said, "We can't run this ad." I said, "Why?" He says, "Because Chinese parents don't want to see their children playing alone. They want to see their children playing with other children." What a cultural shock that was. Now, look, I was in my mid-20s. Wow. I learned, but this is the kind of thing that everyone needs to learn about the different cultures. And boy, if I didn't have a country manager there who understood the Taiwanese culture, I would have run an ad that would have failed just because of my ignorance. It wasn't bias. It was just pure ignorance.
That's really interesting. I'm looking at some notes here, so please forgive me for looking down. Mm-hmm. Back in college or grad school, back then, way back then, okay, that's a long time ago, I know, but, and now a word from our co-sponsors. Our programs wouldn't happen without the wonderful support of our advertisers. Here they are.
Something that's really neat is that the Bridge School partners with various organizations to provide learning for their students. For example, we partner with a major ballet company, and we are able to enroll several of their students into our school. So now not only is the student able to participate in a school and have a seamless transition while they're very active in their ballet career, but now they have other dancers that are with them that are doing some of the same courses. So it's almost becoming a camaraderie where they're taking similar courses, they're working together on their ballet, and really being able to form this great partnership with these organizations to provide a needed service. A lot of times there are student athletes who will spend hours and hours at the gym or at the basketball courts, wherever it is. And if they're attending a traditional school, they're in school from 8 to 3. They get a quick snack, and then they're at the gym for 3 to 4 hours in the evening. Coming to us and having that partnership, they're able to break that up throughout the day. They can have a morning practice, get some schooling in, have an afternoon practice, finish their schooling in the evening. So there's that flexibility. And additionally, if there are tournaments or performances, it's fantastic because if there's a week where they have shows straight through, they can take that week off of learning and then pick back up when they're done. So it offers this great flexibility. And for the program owners of these sports leagues, it is a win-win situation for them because they see this need. They see this need that their students need to make sure that they are obtaining the grades necessary to be successful adults in our country and in other countries. But it provides them an environment where they can be successful at both.
This episode from the meeting room of Global TV Talk Show is brought to you by
The Bridge School, the accredited international online private school of choice, at bridgek12.org.
Porch Light Rental and Destination Services. Reduce your renter lump sum or managed relocation costs. Visit them at porchlightrental.com.
CubeMonk, featuring the world's first smart cube. Track your goods with our advanced GPS system. Welcome to the future of moving and relocation at cubemonk.com.
Primestone Partners, featuring corporate, government, and developer housing solutions, as well as senior-level advisory services. Find them at primestonepartners.com.
And by heirs.com. With our full range of services, we can help design and manage your international relocation. Find us at heirs.com.
Insured Nomads provides protection and peace of mind, with health insurance, travel insurance, group, or tailored insurance for the globally mobile. Visit us at insurednomads.com.
And by International Auto Source. We are the vehicle experts for expats, featuring all major brands of automobiles with flexible solutions and financing. On the web at intlauto.com.
Hi, my name is Christine. I'm a nurse from the Philippines, and I got to know IAS through Worldwide Health Staff Solutions. And I want to thank IAS, especially to Matthew, for helping me get my car stress-free, headache-free. And so I just want to show you the car that I got. So it's a RAV4 XLE 2020.
As an expat moving to the USA, relocating is exciting, but it can also be stressful. Getting a car, truck, or SUV for personal transportation is usually a high priority. That's where International Auto Source comes in. We make getting the vehicle you want for your work assignment or academic program easy, so you're ready to drive when you arrive. Our product specialists have helped over 50,000 expatriates with their personal transportation needs, making us the largest international auto retailer in the world. International Auto Source gives you flexible payment options to buy, lease, or rent a vehicle from the world's leading auto brands, arrange financing on a purchase or lease without a U.S. credit history, social security number, or driving record, get full insurance coverage, and get approved easily through our low-rate factory-backed financing programs. And because we're an authorized distributor of the world's leading automotive brands, our no-haggle prices are competitive, and the buying experience is hassle-free. We'll even guarantee your new vehicle will be ready the day you arrive. With over 20 years of experience in the global community, we are the vehicle experts for expats. We are International Auto Source.
And this is unrehearsed, audience. Hello. What was your favorite course? So who was your favorite professor and what made it that way? Like for instance, I had one. And so the professor, he was tough to take as a student, and I was just a kid, you know. But so he was a big, tall guy. In his youth, he was probably a basketball player. He was like a 6'6" or something and skinny. And now at that time I was like 19, 20 years old or so, right? he probably was in his 50s, but at the time he probably looked like 70. I don't know, but but he was a real smart dude when it came to marketing.
Right.
Okay, and so there was this book that Drucker, or whatever his name was, professor, Marketing Myopia.
Right.
So anyway, the professor loved this book, and he says, I have a criteria, a college course here that I was going to give you guys, but we're just going to work on this book. Just forget about that. We're going to do something new here. And so he talked about marketing myopia and what it meant. So his example at that moment was the New York Central Railroad, okay, which was a huge industrial company. And then they went broke or something, and why did they do that? Okay, when they had all the assets and all the know-how, he talked about the people and he didn't use the word culture, but just the people and the old ways of doing things and the club mentality, and they had all this land, all right, along. Not only do they have the track right away and all the machinery and all this stuff, but they had the air rights to the electrical lines that go overhead and the ground rights underneath, and like 100 yards on either the side of the tracks. They owned all that land, and they never did anything with all that. So they forgot who they were and what they were doing, other than they knew how to load freight cars and ship them, which was fine. But the world was changing at that time. This is late 60s, and they didn't develop the assets that they had. They didn't know what to do with it, or they didn't let those people in the boardroom. Okay, so now it's totally different, isn't it?
Oh, totally different. I mean, in some ways not. I mean, some organizations can do what I would call disruptive thinking. I mean, Uber is the best at it. I think they disrupted the taxi industry, but also, look what they did recently in Southern California, in California, in the elections in November. They realized the importance of taking care of their drivers and getting something on the ballot and finding a solution that benefited the company and the drivers, and got it passed and got the voters to vote for it. They've been very successful. I look at another company like, for instance, PayPal. I think PayPal had the chance to do some disruptive thinking with the person-to-person payments and transfers and stuff like that. But I think a lot of their leadership team still thinks like bankers, and they're afraid to move forward, and they're not as disruptive as they could be or could have been. I mean, I don't put them in the same category as Uber. They look at their assets much like the railroad company, and I think they still think they're a financial company when they really are a payments company, or maybe they could be even something more than just a payments company. I don't think they've thought that through like Uber has.
It's really fascinating. Stephen Howard, you're a genius at this stuff. So
Wow.
no, I mean, because you got your hands on, and your head's not in the clouds.
Well, my background was marketing before I got into leadership. So and I remember some of my early books like Positioning and Porter's book on strategic thinking and stuff. And these are classic books, and I don't think people read anymore today. And as a result, there's not a lot of that disruptive type thinking in the workplace, particularly from a marketing standpoint.
So the wheels are turning right now, That means that we've got to do a video together about marketing myopia.
I totally agree.
And so how do you do that with the Republican Party? No politics.
No politics. I'll stay away from that one. But I just as an aside here, when I worked at Citibank as a vice president, the phrase I used to always hear was, "Well, we've always done it this way." And I said, "Wait a second, guys, that's stupid. That's crazy." At Citibank, we used to mandate that if you wanted to deposit money and open an account, you had to come into the branch. You want to put $5,000, you had to come into the branch, show us your identification card. This is in Singapore. Everyone has an ID card, and we will allow you to deposit your money. If you wanted a credit card, we would run an ad in the newspaper. You'd fill out the application, you would mail it in. We would send you a credit card with $20,000 credit limit without ever seeing you. All you had to do was send us a photostat of your identity card and say, "This is crazy." So I changed it. And they said, well, that's the way it's always been done. And people thought it was the law. And I found out it wasn't. So we actually were the first bank in Singapore.
Wow.
You could mail us a check. And what I did, if you mailed us a check for $50,000 and opened up an account, I hand delivered you a bottle of Hennessy cognac. So that's how we got people to bank through the mail.
So interesting, very interesting. Okay, let's talk about just a review. Okay, let's go back in time.
Okay.
To from your view, Professor. Name 3 or 4 or 2 or 3 core leadership things that we got to just drill down and remember,
Okay.
relevant to the new now, but right now, today.
Right now.
December 1, 2020, and now go to February 1, 21. All right, just a couple of months from now.
Right.
The world's going to be different.
Hopefully.
The vaccine.
Yep.
Longer days, more daylight.
Yeah.
But also new president, experienced. This is not political, it's just business. But they're bringing in a whole new team that's a bunch of old people, but there'll be no transition time. Everything's going to hit the ground running and just start doing things different. Now, President Trump, is odd duck. Talk about a duck in a taco. It's just, some of the business things, and the warp speed is one of them, but some of the other business ideas, great. But boy, the package was just non-communicable to the other 80 million, right? And so transfer all that now to a business manager who you're coaching now, and how things are going to be different 2-3 months from now.
Oh, that's a loaded question. If you give me 30 minutes, I'll answer all of it. But in a short, well, here's what I'm telling leaders today is, and we talk about living in a VUCA world, VUCA, and it stands for volatility, uncertainty, complexity, ambiguity. And I agree with you, Ed. I think January 20th, we'll have more certainty in the United States, and as the United States trades with the world, there'll be more certainty after that, particularly no matter who won, it was going to be more certainty, number one, because we get out of the election cycle, if nothing else. So here's what I'm encouraging leaders to change VUCA to mean. So the V should be vision. What is your vision? And how are you going to create a shared vision with your team members? Right down to the front line. So whatever level leadership you are, every level below you, how are you going to create a shared vision? And then understanding. So to change the U from uncertainty to understanding how we're going to react, understanding how we're going to work together, understanding how we're going to be more kind to each other as human beings in the workplace. Change complexity to clarity and confidence. Let's act with more confidence. And then the last one is agility. So going from ambiguity to we are still going to have to be quick on our feet. We're still going to have to be very careful that, the pandemic may come back. We don't know where oil and gas prices are going to go. They should go up when travel increases, as the economy increases, but all kinds of things may happen. We don't know where the US dollar is going to go in terms of global trade. So you're still going to have to be agile, but you're going to need to be more confident in your decision making. I think one of the worst things that's happened in the pandemic is that so many organizations and so many leaders lost their confidence, and they looked not even month to month, almost week to week, sometimes even day to day, and were afraid to make decisions. They were afraid to take any risk. And it was a very uncertain time, no doubt about it, particularly in the early days, the first 60, 70 days of the lockdown. But I'm still seeing leaders today who really don't know what to do, how to make a decision. And
so let's look at that. What I'm not a banker, and so look at what the Federal Reserve did, Chairman Powell. To my surprise, but boy, I'm glad that he shepherded that program through, of almost completely different from what the financial leaders did in 2008. They moved faster. flooded the system, opened up spigots, and whatever it was called, they propped up the stock markets. And, they decided it doesn't make any sense for this company to lose so much value. Remember the 1,000-point drops?
Right.
It was whoa.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then all of a sudden bounced right back. Now, why? Well, because there is buying. That's all. And so it was the Fed doing that, and through their agents. But that was just brilliant, remarkable leadership right off the bat. And it's not political; it's business.
Yes.
And so now everybody else below that financial brain trust level is playing catch up, and the political leaders in some states, they don't know what they're doing, and they keep changing their minds, and people are going crazy, and you can see it in civil unrest. It's because it's flamed with outside agitators, but it's still happening though. Period. In the past, it wouldn't ever happen.
Yeah, and I would add to that. I think the combination of Congress and the White House and others, I think this time around, people realize that the workforce is different than it was in 1988 and 2004. I mean, for instance, I think one of the smartest things that everyone did, all the leaders did, is take care of the independent contractors. People who were going to be unemployed and have no income through no fault of their own, simply because they, for instance, in my case, there's no classroom training. I can't make a living any longer. Maybe some virtual training, but I can't make the same kind of living because there's no classroom training. So I think the fact that they realize the bulk of the workforce is not in manufacturing anymore, or a large portion of it's not in manufacturing anymore. It's not in services. It's a whole bunch of small, medium-sized enterprises. It's independent contractors who may have no employees or 1 or 2 employees, and they protected them as well, particularly with that $600 a week for a while from the federal government, as well as many states agree that these people need unemployment insurance, just like the person who loses their job at a restaurant, or a person who loses their job at a hotel. That, I think, also kept the economy more stabilized than it would have.
Yeah, so like in my enterprise, for 20, 25 years, we relied on doing live meetings, bringing people together. They buy a ticket, I sell sponsorships, but there's all very local. And I always thought, boy, it takes so much energy and so much effort to put one of these live meetings together with so many different people, and then poof, it's gone.
Yeah.
There's no recording, and nobody outside in the world will ever see all the beautiful things that went on. And so here we are now on Zoom, and I've been fortunate to ride the wave, hanging 10 for a while, and hopefully it will continue. But it has been a breakthrough for me to bring the world together and meet you and have several shows with you and do a deep dive in your thinking. And now we're like going forward. So in the future, I see a hybrid when there will be meetings again, but it's certainly going to be recorded. It'll be live. There'll be chat. People from elsewhere who are not in that space can participate openly.
Yeah, absolutely.
Period. So one of the things that drove me this way was sort of backwards and upside down. Talk about agility. I don't even know what that word means. I mean, agile, but I don't know what it means. So, but I went to a venture capitalist and I said, well, this is my business, blah, 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 and this is what I want to do. And I want to take it global, and, I need about $500,000. So he says, you're going to lose the money. I'm not going to give it to you. Just like that.
Yeah, right.
So, you'd think that was tough. It was tough. But then he said, you already know what to do. You're just not doing it. So I said, well, what do you mean? He says, go to Zoom.
Yeah.
And learn how to do that and be Johnny Carson,
Yeah.
be a host, and how to not entertain people, but how to make it entertaining. Otherwise, people will be bored, they'll fall asleep, So having people on my program like you, Stephen Howard, who's got an electric personality as well as a lot of deep knowledge. I mean, this is a terrific thing. So let's zero in now on the word agility. What the hell does this mean?
I think agility is the ability to move. The common word today is pivot. Some people use that word pivot, but I think it's just to be flexible, to be able to have long-term plans, but understand that you might have to make some short-term course corrections, or maybe even change your medium-term plans as you need. For instance, in my case, we talked about the online program earlier. I had a specific audience in mind, those new supervisors, those new leaders, and whatever. What my biggest audience for this program is today? It's the multinational companies that I used to teach in the classroom, because there's going to be no classroom training for another 12 to 18 months. So I've had to be agile enough to position it, change the pricing, offer some corporate pricing if you put 5 or more people in the program at one time. I said one of the unique things about this program is I'll give 24 months of coaching to the individuals who sign up for the program. But for a corporation, if they put like 10 people in it, I'll do private coaching just for their employees, for their group of 10 or 15 or whatever. So that's being agile. Rather than just saying, I've got a program, this is my target market, I don't want to talk to anybody else. The pandemic has forced me to be a bit agile. So that makes sense. So that little bit of flexibility, staying with your strategic plan, but having a little bit of flexibility and maneuverability and some quickness, I think, are all aspects, characteristics of being agile.
Well, that's brilliant. So talk to us about this other word. It's not a new word, the Scrum, okay, and the Scrum Master. So are you a master?
No, and I think that came out of the software industry, quite frankly. I know just a little bit about the Scrum concept, but the concept was really moving forward. Don't get all the bugs out of the system. Keep moving forward. Keep getting it in hands of customers. Listing to your customers was a big aspect to it, I think, when Scrum first came out. And it goes back to a little bit of what agile leadership is all about. Is again, not locking yourself in and saying, this is the way I want my app to work, for instance. Well, customers may want to do different things with your app. So be agile enough and get it out there and get the iterations out there as quickly as possible, upgrade it. But also, I think the Scrum methodology had to do a little bit with openness, if I understand correctly, kind of open source, if you will, letting lots of people work on it at one time rather than just assigning 2 people to develop the software code.
So how different is that from this concept of design thinking?
Again, I'm not an expert in design thinking, but I think
Yeah,
I don't know. I know when I first started doing stuff, look, you talk about philosophy. My marketing philosophy was and still is, if it touches the customer, it's a marketing issue. So anything that touched the customer, when I was in the marketing arena or a consultant to companies in marketing, your bank statement touches the customer. So that's a marketing issue. People used to think that was a financial department issue, or that was a technology department issue because they printed the statements every month. So I think design thinking, from my perspective, I would say customer design thinking. You have to design everything with that customer in mind. Others do, I think, design thinking in terms of productivity, efficiency, cost efficiency. This is where Volkswagen got in trouble. I'm going to circle back to leadership here. Volkswagen, when they cheated the EPA in the diesel scandal, the diesel emissions scandal, they could have not done what they did. They could have put a part that would have cost $375 in each vehicle. So remember, it was 11 million vehicles here in the United States. So that's a lot of money. But for $375 per vehicle, they would not have had to cheat. But they decided it was cheaper, more cost efficient. They designed the car. They designed the software to cheat the Environmental Protection Agency rules and regulations. That's where design theory goes wrong, I think. And it's cost Volkswagen company to date, something like 32 billion with a B, $billion, since that scandal hit 6 years ago.
Unbelievable. Unbelievable. So, why is Salesforce, in your view, spending all this money to take over Slack?
I think they recognize as a weakness. Again, back in my marketing days, and that was the early days of Salesforce. I mean, there's an interesting thing. Salesforce builds what's called customer CRM, customer relationship management programs. Well, number one, I don't know a single customer who wants to be managed. I don't know a single customer that wants a relationship to be managed. I used to advocate, no one would listen to me, that CRM should stand for customer retention management. How do you retain your customers? The Salesforce and I don't get on very well as a result of that. But yeah, and I understand the concept behind their system, and I have yet to ever meet a salesperson in the field, much less a sales manager, who loves to input data into Salesforce. So it's one of these things that management likes Salesforce. They like that CRM, so they get this perspective of the customer, in one screen. They can see what's happening, but they don't really see what's happening with the relation with the customer. They see a bunch of numbers. They see a bunch of action items. It's got some great follow-up systems too. I mean, it's a great trigger to remind you, hey, you need to call Ed Cohen, and it's been 2 weeks since you sent that proposal to him, that sort of stuff. But I think so. Slack hopefully fixes some of the gaps in their system. I know a company that I consult to at the moment. They have just dropped their contract with Salesforce. They found it too expensive. No one wanted to use it again. They're not a huge organization, but they've just canceled their contract, and they're going to build it internally just because it has too many bells and whistles from what they need.
To what this relates to your experience with customers in Mexico and perhaps elsewhere. Culture, all right? There's a corporate project, doesn't matter what it is, okay? Will Mexican business leaders do it differently than American business leaders?
Typically, there's two kinds of cultures we have to take into consideration. There's a nationalistic culture, the way things are done on a national basis or within any kind of a culture. And there's a corporate culture. For instance, as an example, in Singapore, when I was at Citibank had very much a Citibank culture, and it was an American banking institution that did things the American way. A local bank, OCBC, the Overseas Chinese Banking Corporation, it was very local in its corporate culture, and it had very much a Chinese Singaporean culture to it. Same country, two banks, same industry, competing against each other, but had different corporate cultures. And in this case, the Citibank corporate culture was so strong, it overwhelmed, because 92% of our employees were Singaporeans. So it overwhelmed the Singaporean national culture. The people, when they got hired by Citibank, as we used to say, they drank the Kool-Aid, and they became more Citibankers and less Singaporeans over the years, the longer they stayed with Citibank. So the corporate culture sometimes can be overwhelming. Sometimes corporations need to understand that some policies, some projects, some procedures, you need to let the local culture take precedent over it, not the corporate culture, if that makes sense.
Let's talk about HR, and as we come to a close here, transformation of HR, the function within a corporate structure, transforming HR from a marketing, in other words, integrating marketing with HR or HR with marketing.
Mm-hmm.
Same thing, right?
Same thing. So you have national cultures, you have corporate culture, and you have functional cultures. And people within functions tend to think differently. I mean, that's one of the struggles you have. I mean, marketing people do not think like IT people. Marketing people certainly don't think like financial control people. I mean, marketing people, we want to spend money, and financial control people are always looking at expenses and controlling costs, basically. I think HR, some of the best HR leaders I've ever worked with had a marketing mindset to an extent, but their market was the employees. and management. And so they did a very good job of marketing and communicating to the employees and creating that corporate culture and creating that what that corporate brand stands for. And I think HR people, some people are very good at that. Others get into that HR functionality role. It's all paperwork, it's processes. This is the time of year we do our annual performance reviews. This is the process for this. Here's this policy on this. Here's this policy on expense day. And they're very policy driven. And very functional driven, and they don't have that marketing mindset at all. They don't even think of their employees as customers, which they really are. They're your customers of the HR department.
So in the more narrow focused world of talent mobility management, all right, it's not the same as you going from VP HR into VP marketing.
Mm-hmm.
Although it is,
Yeah.
but the moving you from California to Texas, for instance, or Singapore back to California, this is relocation,
Right.
and not just packing the boxes and moving, but the mind shift. Okay, the mobility managers recognizing the in-house mobility managers. Recognize that mobility function or thinking should be in the whole talent management syndrome here. From
Right.
talent acquisition, you're going to have to relocate people unless they're on the same floor or the same building. You're going to have to relocate them, and there's a lot of money involved and a lot of risk if you don't do it right.
Yeah.
So the mobility managers want a seat at the table, and want to be more integrated, and everybody else in the structure, almost everybody else, says, "Who are you? What are you doing? Just take care of me when I have to move my boxes."
I think, like everyone else who wants a seat at the table, mobility managers need to show what their value add is. And for me, and look, I was an expat for many years, and you have an advertiser now. I wish I had. I mean, I can't remember the name, unfortunately, but your advertiser who helps people get their cars when they move.
Yeah.
What a great service that is. I wish I had that when I moved to Singapore in 1980. I had to do it all myself. And all the problems that they talk about, I had no credit history in Singapore. I didn't even have a bank account. I had nobody to co-sign for me, all that kind of stuff. That's the value add that mobility managers can bring to the table. And that's what they need to focus on. It's not, don't worry about reducing costs. We're going to ship those boxes for the most cost efficient methodology possible. We're going to limit the person's time in a hotel when they transfer from one seat to another. That cost mentality is not value add.
Yeah.
The value add is we're going to make sure that the employee is successful, that they understand the business culture of where they're going to. We're going to make sure that the traveling spouse, if there is one, understands the social culture. If there's kids traveling, we're going to make sure that they understand how to integrate with the local children. Blah, blah. This is the value add that mobility managers, I believe, bring to the table.
Yeah.
And the more they communicate that, again, it goes back to marketing. The more they market themselves to their audience, that these are the value add things that they can help everyone. And this is the benefit to the company of doing so. Like the employee gets on the ground running, within the first week or 2 weeks, not 2 months later, and all the expense of having the employee not being productive for 2 months. I think this is where the mobility managers should be at the table if they have that mindset.
Talking with Stephen Howard. So your LinkedIn page is just.
I think it's Stephen Howard at LinkedIn. I think it says Los Angeles Greater Metropolitan Region or something like that. But you should be able to find me there. You can find me on Twitter at Stephen B. Howard. But the easiest way to find me is the website, calianteleadership.com, or the other website, theartofgreatleadership.com. And both of these have links to all my social media and email addresses and everything else.
Okay. And the latest book title?
The latest book came out in May. I am one of these people who made use of the pandemic downtime, and I took excerpts from a previous book and added more research to it. It's called How Stress and Anxiety Impacts Your Decision Making. And it really does. And this is aimed not just at leaders. This is aimed at everybody. How stress impacts your personal decisions, how anxiety impacts your personal decisions. So it's, and I purposely kept it, I think it's under $15 on Amazon in paperback. It's in Kindle. It's only about 160 pages, I believe. So I've kept it short, sweet, and a lot of tips for people to manage their stress, manage their anxiety. And, now that we're going into the Christmas season and, we've got the third wave of the pandemic, everyone's going to be highly stressed. So it's a great book to read, give to a friend or a family member, and just make better decisions and prepare yourself for 2021.
Thank you. This has been a delight for me and a learning experience. And thank you again for being on Global TV Talk Show.
Thank you, Ed. It's been a pleasure. Always enjoy your show. Always enjoy having a conversation with you. One day we'll have a cup of coffee, sit together and have these kind of conversations.
Yeah, I'll meet you in Palm Springs.
I'll be there.
All right, cool. Thank you. Signing off from San Diego and Mexico City. Wow. Yeah. Adios, amigo.
Adios.
Thank you for joining us in the meeting room at Global TV Talk Show.
Have a wonderful day, and stay safe.